Every woman that I've dated has made it very clear that she would chop my head off if I even made out with another girl. So the idea of a woman approaching a guy and saying, hey, yeah, you can do your own thing, I'll do my own thing, I think we should maybe open this thing up, just feels very off to me. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Something Something with Eric Newman. I'm Eric Newman here as usual at the Comedy Cellar Studio above the Olive Tree Cafe in Greenwich Village, Manhattan. I'm here with Zoran. I'm here with John. And I have another return guest. I love return guests because it shows stability, proof of stability in my otherwise unstable life. And it shows that I'm able to maintain relationships, even if it's on a strictly performative basis. I have Joe Nucci back. Dr. Joe Nucci.
I'm also not a doctor. The glasses just trick people.
You're not a doctor?
Well, I am. I mean, I do have a master's degree, but no, I feel like, I don't know what the stat is, but I don't think most therapists are technically doctors. There's a lot of people with doctorates, they do research. They don't like practice.
Joe, not most therapists, but you are.
Oh, yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we have Joe Nucci. He just we just took away his doctor's title.
Oh.
He's now stripped down to a mere human mortal.
I'm not going to sound smart anymore, am I?
All of a sudden, your glasses just disappear. You have to do me a big favor, Joe.
Oh.
Seriously, man. And I know our relationship dynamic has purely consisted of you doing me nothing but favors.
Oh.
It is completely one-sided, and you haven't gotten anything in return in this relationship. I can declaratively state.
He's setting me up quite nicely.
You have to help me understand women.
Oh.
And I'm not giving myself any credit here by saying this. I'm not sure if it's possible.
Oh.
I'm not sure if it's possible. So I brought you on. Now that I find out you're not a doctor, I deeply regret it, and you can leave. But yeah, you got to help me understand women, man. Give me just like your 30-second nutshell overview of how you dissect the art of understanding what women want. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know what you think that a gay, not doctor therapist has to teach you on the subject, but I'll do my best.
See how desperate I am?
Yeah, no, I mean, apparently. I mean, I guess, do you feel like you understand men?
I have a good sense of self.
Okay.
Now, I don't know how much that translates to the rest of straight men, but yeah, I think I have a fairly good grasp on what men want, I think.
Okay. And so do you think that you could broaden it to say like you understand people, or is it specifically women just trip you up?
I'm not quite sure how much I'm being humble here or how interesting I think it is to project the idea that I don't understand women versus how much I actually understand them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, well, what's coming up for me is that in a lot of the like the psych studies on emotion, particularly emotional expression, like the kinds of like faces you make if you're sad or angry, or like what you're willing to verbalize. They've done some work of finding that this stuff is universal. It's cross-cultural. It is cross-gender. Not every single time, but often. But what messes people up is that it's so culturally mediated. You know what I mean? And so I think that maybe is what is precisely tripping you up. And I think that if you can understand people in general, the understanding women will hopefully follow.
Okay, well, people in general, right? We'll start with people in general, right? People want to be loved. They want to be appreciated. But there are things that fall into generalizations of women a little more often than they fall into generalizations of men, and vice versa, right? There's that stereotype that like women are very emotional and men are very logical. That's at least what men say a lot.
Yeah.
I think when you project this idea of I'm logical, you're emotional, you're essentially giving a negative connotation to the one who's emotional, right? You're saying I think with logic and I'm rational, and you think, you know, emotionally, and which is an implication that, you know, you get crazy and have no control over your emotions and whatever, right? But the truth is that men behave very emotionally also. Can I tell you a story real quick?
Yeah.
And get your opinions on it? Okay. So we talked about open relationships a little bit last time. My stance last time was that I don't believe that open relationships between men and women are sustainable long term. Obviously, there's room for exceptions. There's always room for exceptions. But on a general basis, I don't believe that they will sustain themselves in a productive, healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
Will monogamous relationships sustain themselves in a productive, healthy way long term? I don't have much evidence for that either. But it seems to me that you have a better chance being monogamous than open. Anyway, a girl I know, she started dating a guy in college. They were both 19. They've been together now like 6 or 7 years, and they're getting engaged. They're planning a wedding currently. And I heard a couple weeks ago that she approached him and said, in the midst of wedding planning, and said that she wants to be open. And I don't know exactly what the parameters are. I don't know the exact details of the situation, but generally the sentiment was, hey, you're my first serious boyfriend. She'd had hooked up with people in the past or whatever, but you're my first serious boyfriend. And in the midst of wedding planning, she's now like talking to other guys, going on dates, made out once or twice, hasn't slept with anybody, whatever. And he sort of reluctantly, again, I wasn't in the room for this, but from what I've been told, he reluctantly was like, yeah, anyway, he's extremely wealthy. Extremely wealthy, 7 houses, family's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. She comes from a much more modest lifestyle and upbringing. And I have been told, this has been relayed to me, that his parents haven't been very generous as far as chipping in for the wedding. And they have more than enough means to do so. The soon-to-be groom, I actually probably shouldn't call him the soon-to-be groom because I think there's a very good chance the wedding might flop altogether based on this new information. And that is just my perspective. It could very well happen. There's been frustration between them because his family has a lot of money. They won't chip in. He hasn't approached the family. And I'm not sure, this was not confirmed that she was frustrated by that. I can imagine that she is. I want to hear your perspective on this. My feelings are they probably shouldn't go through with it. They probably still will. I already think the relationship is fucked. I think that dynamic of her initiating an open relationship is bad. I do not believe he's pursuing other women or doing anything. I've also met him, and I'm not sure how many options he has to do that anyway. And that's usually those cases, in my opinion, by the way. I think a lot of the times when a woman is in a relationship with a guy and she initiates an open relationship, in my mind, I already imagine what the guy is like. And 9 times out of 10, that's that guy.
Interesting.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. I've said what I've had to say. You tell me, you go.
Well, I'm a generally like pretty sex positive guy.
Yeah.
Not very judgmental. But to propose that in the middle of wedding planning, like, ouch. I don't know. I wouldn't like that, and I've been in open relationships. It also kind of makes me think of,
what's the difference, by the way? What's the difference between in the middle of wedding planning or in the middle of 4-year regular?
Well, I think that the timing is really important. I mean, it's like you're planning your wedding. The wedding is like this day where you're going to get in front of all your friends and family and do this ritual where you're declaring to everyone else that it's like, we're in this forever. Yeah. And then it's during that time where you're just like, hey, actually, I want to explore this dynamic that is not simple or straightforward, I think. I think it takes a lot of processing and self-awareness and a lot of intentionality and a lot of consent on both sides. Like, oh, I'm going to introduce this new dynamic like during this time. Ideally, it came up before that in dating. But my first thought about it when you told me the story was there's this stereotype. I think that it happens in the gay community, happens amongst straight people. I think it is leveraged towards men and women. Yeah. This idea of like, oh, this person is very sexual. So they can't commit. They can't settle down. Like they're too much of a slut. They're like too loose. Or
complete bullshit.
I agree.
Yeah.
Because, and I think this is a great example of it, because the other narrative isn't so often circulated, which is, well, what if you're proper all your life? What if you save yourself for marriage or whatever it is? And then it's later you're married and you're just kind of like, well, I feel like I didn't really get out there. I feel like I didn't like have enough variety. In theory, the person that has kind of been around the block a few times knows what's out there. They know what they're missing and they're choosing you despite having that freedom. They're actually maybe the safer bet in some ways. I think it obviously kind of depends on the person, but it's a little bit interesting that that people are kind of biased to one side.
Well, this actually comes back to a point I made in a different episode with my friend Allie Edwards. I don't believe there's any validity to getting it out of your system. I don't think there's like an X number of people or X number of experiences you had.
Well, I think it depends on why you want all the experiences. If you're like in college or in your 20s and you're just learning about what you like and what
Yeah.
you don't like, and it's a journey of self-discovery, then at a certain point, maybe you've discovered yourself and you know what you like and you don't like, and you want someone that somewhat matches that. If you're trying to, pun not intended, like fill some hole, in your heart, then maybe it's never going to be enough.
The thing that I think about is that, like, for example, like my dating history over the last 5 years has basically been, I have a month fling, I meet somebody else in the middle of that month fling, I talk to them, the month fling ends, I start going on dates with this girl. And like the cycle sort of continues. And I probably at post my breakup with my almost fiance, all the way to meeting my current girlfriend, it was sort of the same thing. Like I kept meeting people, I hooked up with them, I met other people, I hooked up with them. And I probably had somewhere between like 10 and 15 flings at that time. None of them were one night stands, but couple dates, whatever it was. There was a point where I said, I could do this forever. Like I could literally just keep doing this forever. Just different girl, different blonde, different brunette. I mean, especially like in this city where I'm doing stand-up, it's like an endless conveyor belt of beautiful women who just keep coming into the city, and I keep meeting. So like to me, that felt sort of endless and also empty, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just feel like, sort of getting back to what we were saying, like, you're right. The timing is important because it's like, oh, like, sort of like, let's get it in under the wire here. I don't have enough experience, but that's not going to do it. Like, you're not going to have like one fling. I believe that he's missing qualities, or their relationship is missing qualities that she needs. Now, with the pressure of the wedding planning and the wedding on the horizon, she's never been more aware of it. And instead of calling the whole thing off, which seems like a travesty at this point, right? 7-year relationship in the midst of wedding planning, she feels financially secure for the rest of her life to some degree or another. I think I said online during that time that you shared my clip where we originally met, I see open relationships as just auditioning the next people for the next relationship.
Well, and I think the truth is some people use open relationships for that.
Okay.
Some don't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that some people, obviously conduct themselves super
Those
ethically.
people are called, the people who don't are called, I believe, men.
Oh,
And the people who do, I believe, are called women.
yeah.
I'm going to get shit for this.
Yeah.
I'm generalizing, but I do believe.
I think that one of the harder things about finding the formulas that bring clarity to like love or sex or dating or partnership is, it's like the answer is probably usually sometimes, like no doubt that there's a lot of men that do that, like for sure, right? And there's no doubt that some women operate that way, for sure. And like the absolute inverse, right?
Yeah.
There are men who would never conduct themselves that way. And that's probably why people will get upset. It's not because what you said has no truth. It's probably just because it's not the whole truth, but
It's not.
giving a whole nuanced truth is a great way to get no views on your clips. So,
There you go.
You know what I mean? Like,
What and here's the other thing I wanted to point out. I've been in a lot of relationships and I've dated a lot of people at this point. It can't be a coincidence that my dynamic is so specific and unique. Every woman that I've dated, to any type of a serious degree, has made it very clear that she would want to chop my head off if I even made out with another girl. So the idea that a woman is then approaching her man and saying, hey, this is a little uncomfortable, and it's taken me a lot of courage to say this to you, but I think we should maybe open this thing up, knowing full well that you're now putting a man back on the market to do whatever the fuck he wants and keep the door open. Because like I say, with men and women, I don't believe that anybody is emotionally strong enough. It's the same reason, same logic I use for why I think that cheating is bad. When I used to cheat and I would sleep with people, there was some emotion tied to that. It wasn't like a full, like, I'm just trying to get new pussy. Like, I was talking to the girl and I was getting to know the girl and we would hang out before we would hook up. So it was like there was some emotion involved there. So if I'm using that logic for that example, how could I not use the same logic to categorize open relationships as potentially emotionally threatening to the relationship that you are in? The idea of a woman approaching a guy and saying, "Hey, yeah, you can do your own thing, I'll do my own thing,"
Mm-hmm.
just feels very off to me and makes me think that she has one foot out the door of the relationship, majority of the time.
I mean, it's possible. Do you know what
Yeah,
compersion is?
no idea.
It's termed like the opposite of jealousy, and the experience of it is something like
What's the term?
compersion.
Compersion.
Yeah, and the idea is that it's a feeling of delight you have when your partner is getting needs met that you can't give them.
Interesting.
I think that a lot more people probably experience it than they're willing to admit, just to societal pressures like around monogamy or just kind of like the traditional pair bonding. And I know a lot of people who practice kind of open relationships or polyamory who, insist on compersion everything, and then they actually can't like process their jealousy or name it. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Well, that's the other thing. And here's my issue with the whole system. Like, you can't. How do we even track stats when it comes to feeling and emotions?
Right.
Right? Everything seems to go cyclically, right? So, like, for example, somebody's cheating on their partner, and
Mhm.
there's a part of you that gets off more to cheating on your partner, right? And that's sort of undeniable, right? Because like
Mhm.
it's sneaky, it's the
Yeah.
dopamine is up, the adrenaline is up, right?
Mhm.
So like I know that when I was doing it many years ago, there was a part of me that loved being a piece of shit.
Mhm.
Um, and then you get a little older and more mature and you weigh things out and you realize it's not worth
Yeah.
it and you're being dishonest and you're being disloyal and there's a lot of reasons not to do it, which I've ultimately decided is the better path. But while I was doing it, I was undeniably feeling feelings of like, this
Mhm.
feels fucking good. So yeah, jealousy versus in contrast to compersion.
Mhm.
How do you know where jealousy ends and compersion begins? And it feels to me like it would go a little bit in a circle.
Mm. You can certainly experience both,
Right.
you know,
Simultaneously.
even simultaneously. I think that's absolutely the case. Has anyone ever told you what the psychological definition of like a kink or a fetish is?
No, what is the
Yeah.
psychological definition? I don't
So
know. I really don't know much.
the idea is that a kink is something that is taboo, but then when the bedroom door shuts, right, in that erotic space, it becomes fun. And so when people speak about things that are like naughty or wrong,
Yeah.
right, they're usually talking about like a kink. And so some people are actually quite turned off by the idea of infidelity. The idea of cheating or cheated on isn't like, oh, like it would be, such a rush to know that I could do that and get away with it. For some people, it's actually, it's causes a direction, if you will. Like
Interesting.
it's not actually fun.
Because and then does that come down to values? Is my value system fucked up?
Not necessarily, because I think that a lot of times people that are there, if they're erotic, it's called like your erotic template. If they're more kinky, people are often turned on by things that they don't necessarily agree with. So, for an example, if somebody, if like a woman likes to be called like a bitch or a slut in bed, it's actually a fairly like normative, documented kink. Some people like to play psychoanalysis and they say, oh, this is evidence of internalized misogyny. But if you actually look at the definition of a kink, it's like this is something they actually think is wrong outside of bed, but to be able to do it in a safe erotic relationship with a partner, it's like it makes it kind of fun, it makes it kind of exciting,
Interesting.
because they like it because it's taboo. And kinks can be psychological or physical. It could be like the verbal kind of dirty talk example that I just described, or if someone likes to be their hair pulled or to be scratched or to something like that, it's like, well, they probably don't like their hair pulled or getting scratched out on the street by a stranger. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But with that consent and safety, it can be quite pleasurable. Now, does that mean that they have values around, masochism, or do they like being hurt? Do they like not being prioritized in the relationship? Maybe, probably not,
Okay.
is my guess.
Okay. So based on that logic, what advice would you give to people whose kink is cheating?
Yeah.
How would they do that safely in their own relationship?
I don't think you can literally cheat safely in your relationship. You should maybe explore an open dynamic or an agreement of some sort. If you then notice that the idea of that, if it becomes permissible and then it no longer has that erotic charge, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe talk to your therapist about it. I also think that people get off on cheating not because it's like affiliated with some sort of kink or an enjoyment of being naughty, etc. I think that sometimes people are I just think the erotic the erotic part of yourself, like that part of like your organism psychologically is really, really complex. And I think that some people may be doing that because they're afraid of intimacy, or maybe there's some sort of self-sabotaging tendency, or maybe because they're actually not quite ready to settle down but they're with someone they really like, and that they have two values in conflict. When we think about values, one of my favorite, what's her name? She's at NYU. It's like Dr. Susie Welch. She says values are always in conflict. So you may have a value around like loyalty and family and this relationship you have. And you may also have a value around variety and novelty and pleasure, and those will butt heads. Like, so for me, for an example, one of my values is health, right? Yeah. But one of my values is also, acquiring, new experiences, and pleasure and fun with my friends. Those don't always, aren't always aligned.
Because you're going to drink, eat food.
Exactly.
Whatever, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Interesting. So you think they're going to get married or no?
That story, I mean, listen, I don't know them that well, so I'm just like making it up. I think the timing is, for me, it would be a huge bummer.
Yeah. As the guy. Or both of them.
Or as the girl. I mean, if I just think of my own, like a future engagement I'm in, we're happily monogamous and this comes up before, like before the wedding. Also in a time where it's like there's now, because yes, you're 7 years into the relationship, but there's an extra layer of humiliation publicly if you have to call it off during the wedding planning.
Oh, 100%.
You know what I mean?
Did you see the movie? Have you seen the movie yet? It just came out, The Drama, with Zendaya and
no, but I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
Okay, yeah. I watched it last night. I thought it was really good, actually. Yeah. But I'm not going to give too much away, but basically, like, there's a major fact that comes up in the midst of their wedding planning. And he's like thrown through, like he's like all fucked up over it or whatever. Yeah. Spoilers. They were Robert Pattinson and Zendaya's characters are hanging out with their two best friends, and they're getting drunk, and they're like, what's the craziest thing you've ever done or the worst thing you've ever done? And the couple goes around, and then she goes, I was planning on organizing a mass shooting. And she was like, she had the weapon, she was like planning it, she like figured everything out, and then didn't do it. And for like 10 minutes, they're like, wait, what the fuck? You're kidding, right? And she's like, no. And so it comes out, she kind of like gives details to the whole story or whatever, and he really is having a hard time getting past it. And he's
I
like,
get that.
And whatever. And they're in the midst of wedding planning. So now they're taking all these photos and like with the photographer, and like you could see he's unhappy and she feels tense and it's just not cool. And I remember thinking like, I wonder if I would rather that or be the guy that my fiance says, I think we should be open. I was trying to balance it. I'm like, would I rather be the guy that I know in real life going through that, or Robert Pattinson's character and find out that my fiance almost shoot up a school? I don't know, man.
Yeah, well, I think the reason why that one, it feels so much worse is because a lot of times when people share about bad things they've done it out of like reactivity or impulsivity. Yeah. Like, they were feeling emotional for some reason, or they acted without thinking and then they regret what they did. But to take the time to organize something displays a level of intentionality, and where you were like truly considering doing like whatever the act is. And so, yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I'm pretty open-minded. I think that would be hard for me.
It would be harder for you, the school shooting thing?
100%. So, like, I don't think that's a hot take.
Wait, hold on. But to me, you're organizing mass dick. That's.
Are you saying that you would rather date a mass shooter than somebody who's like open and slutty?
Well, first of all, she didn't,
because that's crazy.
Joe, first of all, she didn't shoot anybody.
Okay,
she had the thoughts. This girl might actually go fuck other dudes.
Right, but I think that fucking or even cheating is so different from shooting up people in mass.
I know.
But she didn't shoot anybody.
She didn't shoot anybody.
Yeah, but I just think that there's a hierarchy of morality here that I'm not going to sacrifice on. Like, I think the mass shooting's worse. like I don't know, cancel me. Like, I'm like,
why don't we compromise and just kill the girl?
The girl that's the murderer, or the girl
No,
that's
the
that's
girl
open?
that's open.
What? No.
Okay, we're not gonna do it. We won't do it. We won't do it. All right. We won't do it. All right, Joe. It's yes and.
Oh, that's right.
I don't know.
I don't know, you guys. I think that a lot of the internet is going to really dislike you preferring a murderer, a mass shooter of a high school, to a woman who wants to be open. Like,
Joe, for the greater record, I am not saying that I would prefer a woman telling me she'd rather be open than actually doing a school shooting. Doing a school shooting is the worst thing that could ever happen.
you know, there is a whole branch, and I don't necessarily endorse it, of like psychoanalysis that believes that like a lot of like our world leaders and a lot of these like violent people in past probably just misdirected their sexual energy. And I wonder if you think that's what you're doing with this weird preference that you
You're
have.
right. You say if I was open, then maybe I wouldn't even have the thought to have chosen.
Potentially. But then, you know, and like I think there is truth in that interpretation, but then there's also the other truth where it's like how many crimes of passion have been committed because somebody cheated. You
right.
know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you got to kind
You're
of weigh
right.
it out.
Well, that's
Yeah.
an interesting theory
Yeah.
also, right?
Mhm.
I mean, like, or not even theory. I mean, we have proof for it, right?
Yeah, totally.
Shawshank Redemption, the premise of Shawshank Redemption is Tim Robbins going to jail because
Right.
I forget about that. The
I
reason he
forget
ends up in
that.
jail
Yeah.
30 something
Totally.
years is because they accused him of killing.
I mean, I'm
his
so
wife.
inspired by him like digging himself out through like the sewer and like the tunnel and everything that I forget that technically he was, and I forget, is he wrongly accused?
He's wrongly.
Yeah.
Here's where I have a little bit of a counter stance on open relationships. If a relationship, monogamous relationship, ends with multiple partners dead because of infidelity, in theory, they probably should have had an open relationship.
I mean, that's a really difficult ethical hypothetical, but I think that, you know,
Oh wait, explain to me. Break down ethical hypothetical for a
well,
moment.
because you're asking like what's better, what's worse. Like you're asking an ethical dilemma,
Right.
But it's hypothetical. Like you're saying, you know, door number one, they were, you know, open but ended up dead, and then door number two, they were monogamous and miserable.
No. Monogamous. They ended up. So, for example, if Tim Robbins' wife
Mm-hmm.
would had come to him
Yeah,
initially, approached him and said, "Hey, I want to be open." First of all, Shawshank Redemption never would have happened.
and that would have been the true tragedy. So,
Well, that's it. Exactly. Can you imagine a world where Shawshank Redemption doesn't exist? It's an interesting thought, right?
yeah,
Because somebody kills her and her lover, cold-blooded,
right.
and then they think it's him,
right.
right? And he was actually going to. He had the gun or whatever.
Oh,
Didn't end up going through with it.
so you're saying, is it better that they were just open and avoid the murder?
Probably.
I mean, I guess. I mean, I'm a fan of prioritizing not murder, like we discussed in the hypothetical
I feel very
earlier.
strongly about
I
this.
don't. I mean, like, listen. I hadn't thought about it before, but I will let you know if I change my mind. I don't think it's gonna happen. I'm pretty sure like the safe bet is like the not murder option, especially when it's like the choices are like murder and sex. It's just kind of like, I don't know. Sex is pretty great and murder's pretty bad from what I hear.
It is.
So
It is. My only point is that like I can't imagine it not being disheartening
yeah.
on an average basis as a man in a committed relationship, being monogamous,
Yeah.
and then having your lady
Yeah.
approach you with the idea of openness.
You know what I'm thinking of? Did you ever catch that? Was it in the New York Times or the Boston Globe? Maybe it was like this article where they interviewed a 17-person polycule. So this is like a polycule is like the like the structure of like the multiple people inside the open emotional arrangement. So it's like if you know you're like a dude with two wives, right? Or you're like two couples and you all like hook up with each other. Like that structure is the polycule. But this polycule was made up of 17 people.
And just people hooking up with each other. And
Well, no, well, but it's more than just hooking up because they were polyamorous. So they had like emotional attachments and
Yeah.
like there was actually like a structure It wasn't just that we like each other, we're not going to do anything about it. It was like we're like labeling this a thing, and it was this 17-person web. And you should actually have me back on, and we should read it because it's really funny.
No, we'll read it next
And
time.
I'm, like I've said, like I'm, generally like can be like pretty supportive of different arrangements, but like this did not make this community look good because there was this one dude where he's talking about how when he first agreed to it, like his wife was like having all this sex and all these guys were so much hotter than him and she was having a great time. And he goes, and this is a quote, you can find it. He goes, "There were lots of tears. Therapy really helped, but medication helped me the most." And I was just like, so are you self-medicated because this was so stressful for you?
Yeah.
Like, that's probably not very smart.
Also, it's an odd number. So
Right.
even if everybody paired off with their favorite person, there's
Right.
one person there. Who
Well,
just
I can
doesn't
almost
have it.
guarantee that the equitable pairing off was almost certainly not happening
It
in
wasn't.
that household.
Yeah.
But for me, it brings up something that because some of my like gay patients in my practice will come to see me and they're not wired for openness. And one of the things that I tell them is I'm like, you actually just have to like listen to your nervous system.
Yeah.
Like, does this feel
You
good?
said last time, which I think is great.
Or does it feel bad? And does it feel bad because you have been conditioned or you were raised to just like believe a certain script that ultimately isn't true for you? Or are you is this not your thing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think there's way too many people out there, gay and straight, that are trying to fit themselves, that are square peg trying to fit themselves into a round hole. That was way more sexual than I wanted to be. But the point is like that they're trying to fit into something that they're not meant to.
Yeah.
And then they're wondering why they're having all this drama when it's really like you should date somebody different.
Yeah.
And
a lot of times they ignore their nervous system and just
right.
go forward with people who
totally.
Yeah.
And I think that, to your friend's credit, like at least they're talking about it.
True.
Like
right.
she could have just like ignored it or suppressed it and then like, brought it up
Cheated
later.
for 5 years.
Or exactly. And so I think that if you're stubborn enough that you want to make it work and you're willing to talk about it, your chances go up significantly. And it just depends on how self-aware you are. I mean, there are people who are in monogamous relationships that are super codependent and controlling, and it's toxic and unhealthy. And then there are people that are in open or polyamorous arrangements that are completely avoidant of intimacy.
Yeah.
And they're just using these other situationships to somehow stave off the fears of intimacy. And it's super toxic and
Oh yeah,
unhealthy.
super toxic, which is probably what I was doing.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Yeah. Well, Joe, I love having you back on. When you come back on, we're gonna explore and read that. What is it called? The
17-person polycool. Yeah, I mean it's pretty funny in my opinion.
Well, that's a good cliffhanger. That's a good cliffhanger to leave this episode on, I think. Well,
all right, can't wait.
Joe, thanks so much. I'm sorry you're no longer a doctor.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
And but it was nice that you had that time.
Yes,
in my head where you were.
Yes.
And thanks again for coming on. And we love having you. You're the best.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Joe Nucci, everybody.
God, no.
Non-doctor, Dr. Joe Nucci. And thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Something Something with Eric Newman. Here as always, Tuesday afternoons at the Comedy Cellar Studio. Here with Zoran, here with John. Thank you guys. See you next week. Bye.